A man and a woman walk side by side down a gravel path, a thin line of trees on either side of them. The man's head held high and eyes staring straight forward, he moves with a proud posture and gait, complemented by his choice of outfit, a dark grey suit. The woman walks in step next to him, looking down at the path just ahead. She fidgets with the large round golden clasp at her collar, running her fingers over the carving of a long-legged bird standing atop a boulder. Beyond that, she matched the man's muted tones with a white blouse and a grey skirt that nearly reached the gravel, from which the black toes of her flats would peek out from underneath with every step. The woman continues a conversation with the man. I'm worried he hasn't really dealt with his father's death, distracting himself with parties and throwing himself into his schoolwork. You're worried he's enjoying his friends and is a good student, the man smirks back at her. The woman takes her eyes off the ground to glare at him. The man just continues. He knows he'll be taking over for your husband as soon as he turns 20. He's enjoying what little childhood he has left before needing to rule a country. I'm just worried he hasn't given himself time to grieve. I'll be there to help. It's exactly my job. Around a small bend, their destination came into view. Shrouded in a circle of trees and bushes was a large white gazebo. Inside sit 5 young men at a picnic table, all dressed in nearly identical blue suit jackets and black buttoned shirts, most of which untucked from their grey trousers. The man turns from the woman toward the gazebo and says in a raised voice, Sir! The boys turn towards the man, but after a moment of recognition, most turn back to chatting with one another. All but one, a young man with short, dark brown hair and equally dark brown eyes. This is the one the man addresses. They're starting the meeting soon. You should be there. The boy nods and stands up from the table. He gathers up a few books and tucks them away into a rough-looking leather shoulder bag. Fitting every book into place and taking the time to place a couple pencils and folded notes into the side pocket, he folds the flap over the top. A small golden button decorates the front with the same engraved long-legged bird on a rock. He winds the string attached to the flap around the button 5 times until there is little slack. He walks off from the gazebo as a few of the other kids mumble a "see ya." He grabs a red bike left leaning against the fencing, hops on, and pedals past his advisor and aunt back towards home. At home, there was a meeting held in one of the many large rooms. This room consisted of mainly dark wood walls, flooring, and tables with sparse decorations. In fact, on the walls were rows of nails. These nails used to hold small portraits of the boy's family, his father, grandfather, great-uncle, and so on, all the rulers that came before him. There was one prominent piece still hanging. High up, above 2 large windows, was the royal seal, a golden, wide-winged, and long-legged bird soaring in a sky of blue. In this room sat men and women at the tables, arranged in a semicircle with one table prominently placed at the window in front of everyone. The boy sat to the side of this table and remained silent. The only sound coming from his direction was the scratching of his pencil as he worked in his notebook. Most of the noise came from the boy's uncle and the chairman seated at the table. His uncle on yet another rant and the chairman trying to quell his continuing interruptions. His uncle constantly interrupted arguments over traditions as the woman, his wife, sat next to him, standing steadfast with her husband in his fight for change in antiquated punishments and male succession lines and the encouragement of treaties with their neighboring kingdoms. Sir, the booming voice of the chairman came from the head of the table. Figurehead of this country or no, I will not hesitate to dismiss you from this meeting if you cannot control yourself. Of course, says the uncle, who slides back into his seat as his wife gives him a gentle smile and pat on the shoulder in an attempt to calm him. After some more back and forth between the council members that mainly went in circles, the chairman turns to the boy's uncle to refocus the discussion. Now, sir, do you have anything to say relevant to your duties? The chairman asks in a slow, mocking tone, gesturing towards the empty nails that lined the walls. The chairman took advantage of his status as the man's elder and showed no fear in disrespecting the current ruler. Of course, he says in a calm voice. I'm continuing the questioning of the guards about the recent vandalism inside the walls of our home in order to determine the appropriate course of action. And our young sir? Asked the chairman, gesturing towards the boy whose head remained in his notebook. He is more than ready. Our private lessons have been going perfectly. We couldn't ask for a better leader than my nephew. Well then, I suggest we waste no more time so that you can continue with those duties. The chairman draws the meeting to a close, almost a sense of relief in his voice. The boy packs away his things along with everyone else. His uncle leans over to him and reminds him, I'll come and get you tonight after I follow up on a few things. Of course, the boy smiles at his uncle before swinging his bag over his shoulder and heading out with the crowd. That evening, the boy headed back to his room, carrying a plate of cold food when he spots his aunt coming his way. Late for you, isn't it? The boy says as he notices his aunt coming towards him. Early for you, she says with a smile. Finished with your lessons already? Uncle never showed, so I just went to grab something to eat and figured I'd get some homework done. That's strange, a frown now on the aunt's face. He finished up his meeting with that guard a while ago. I'll check if he's in our room. Maybe he fell ill. Why don't I go and check the study? Maybe I misheard him after all. The boy steps into his room, places the plate on a table near the door, and heads back into the hallway. He follows his aunt to the end of the hall before they turn away from each other and head in their own directions. Minutes later, the boy's aunt descended the stairs quickly, breathing rapidly from the effort of rushing down hallways and pushing past the guards who came to her room to speak with her. Rounding on the study entrance, she noticed the boy and his advisor standing in the doorway. As she approached, the advisor went to grab her and pull her away, but not before she glimpsed inside. On the floor lay the body of her husband, drenched in red, the glimmer of broken glass, and the smell of alcohol hanging in the air. The next morning, the advisor stands in front of one of the guards in his quarters. As it is one of the few rooms that are used by guards that are on call in rotation, it was fairly sparse: a bed fit for one, a chair in the corner, a small table next to each, and a small cupboard to use as a closet. "The meeting with him yesterday was to see if you had remembered anything about that night," asked the advisor. "That's right," replies the guard. Sat on a small single bed, he wore the white undershirt and black pants of his uniform, wrinkled from having been slept in. He busied his hands by polishing the boot in his lap. The right one was sitting on the floor next to him, which, except for the already finished shine, was the same pure black leather, only decorated by the royal seal of bird and blue sky emblazoned on a large button on the top of it. As he worked, the advisor took note of a sporadic twitch in his hand. "Care to elaborate a bit more on the meeting?" continued the advisor. "There's not a lot to tell. I was on duty when it happened, so he had a lot of questions for me in particular, trying to figure out how they got it." "Did you two come to any conclusions?" "I'll tell you the same thing I've been telling people over and over. I did my usual rounds, nothing out of the ordinary, doors and windows locked, nothing broken, nothing to make me think something was off. The paintings of the current and former Sir were still intact." "Yes." "And then nothing." "Yeah, it's all black. I was feeling off that night. I assumed it was some bad food I had for dinner." "Why were you still here after the meeting?" The guard stumbles on his words for a second with the sudden shift in questioning, but answers, "I was still feeling a bit off. Speaking of which, with all this, I've been here for far longer than I was meant to, and would like to get home." "Yes, of course. We'll be in contact if we need anything." Turning and opening the door, the advisor steps past another pair of boots set just outside. The gleam on the pure golden seal at the collar of the shoes showed off a fresh shine. He is startled to discover beyond them was the boy's aunt leaning against the wall, fidgeting with the simple silver clasp at the top of her blouse. Without saying a word, the advisor ushers her away from the door and leads her outside. For a moment they walk silently, the gravel crunching under their feet as the loudest thing around. "That didn't seem like much," she said quietly. "Have you found out anything?" "Maybe, maybe not," the man states, trying to focus on his thoughts. "I heard there was at least something found in the room." The advisor palms a small square photograph he pulls from the inside pocket of his jacket. In it was the button of the golden royal seal surrounded by the carpeting of the study, bile beginning to stain it brown and flecks of white dotted here and there. A royal seal was found nearby, potentially ripped from the killer during the struggle. He tucks the picture away, suddenly breaking away from his thoughts and realizing he was thinking out loud to the widow of that killer's victim. Could he have gotten from the study to the guard's quarters that quickly? The guard? Strange thing is, he wasn't meant to be here. He was meant to head straight back home after the meeting, but said he was feeling off, so he went to the guard's quarters to lay down. I just have trouble believing he of all people had anything to do with it. Loyalty can be fickle, even for men like him. After all these years with us, why would he? That is the question. Men have broken for all kinds of reasons. Money, power, love. The advisor trails off as he goes back into his thoughts. The walk continued in silence. Later, the woman enters the advisor's office, the double doors held open by a pair of guards. A smaller room than most in the home, these doors took up a decent amount of the wall, the rest of the space made slightly claustrophobic from antiques and books covering the sizable dark wood desk and shelves. The advisor stands to the side of the desk with the guard in one of the two short-backed chairs to the front of it. "Thank you for coming, madam." The advisor straightens up and gestures to another chair to the side of the guard. The woman walks forward slowly, taking a glance at the guard before training her eyes on the floor. It wasn't until she reached her seat and the advisor continued that she looked to him. "I had a few more questions and I thought it would just be easier to have the both of you here." "Why is that?" the woman asked, her voice a bit too soft to sound as strong as she intended. Just filling in a few blanks. For example, the advisor turns to face the guard. Your diligence for etiquette is obviously commendable, but why take both pairs of boots with you if you were just traveling here for a quick follow-up? The guard sitting up straight replies, The pair I came with went missing. I picked up a new pair. Well, about time. Those old ones must have been wearing out. However, I'm pretty sure I saw them just outside your door the morning I came to talk to you. They were found and returned by the madam, yes? I wouldn't know. Well, she was there when I left, and neither the boots nor her were there when I arrived. He turns to face the boy's aunt. Madam, how did you know he was in the guards' quarters after he met with your husband? The boy's aunt opens her mouth to speak, but nothing manages to come out. The advisor answers for her. Perhaps you just saw him down there. Been around the guards' quarters a lot lately? Excuse you? The woman finally manages to say. May I also ask, madam, what happened to that golden clasp you always wear? The advisor asks, putting his hand to his collar to mimic the placement of the silver clasp at her neck. It was stolen, the aunt says. Was it? Or did you use it to replace the seal ripped from the guard's boot? The advisor turns his attention to the boots on the guard's feet and the golden seal at the top of the left one. It was the long-legged bird and boulder, but a strange etching around the outside that wasn't present on the right boot's seal. The advisor continues. They are almost identical. From a distance, you may not even notice. Looking up to the guard's face, he says, It wasn't food poisoning that gave you stomach trouble, was it? You and the madam here had some fun, some drink, and when you finally managed to tear yourself away for a moment and make your rounds, you weren't all there. So, would you kindly fill in those blanks for me and explain what happened the night of Sir's murder? He gives a short pause, looking between the two of them, but continues when it is evident neither of them plans on speaking. Then allow me. Sir had found out about this affair. Now, during the meeting, he confronted you about it, or let something slip at least. Afterward, you and the madam met up to talk, and other things, until you decided you needed to talk to Sir again. Unfortunately, he had been the one drinking this time, at which point you got in a fight ending in broken glass and a dead man. And you, facing the woman, noticed the torn button on his boot and decided to help him out by using your clasp as a quick fix. Hard to find the older seal nowadays, isn't it? We were together that evening, the woman said quickly with her head high but eyes unable to follow suit. All evening, he never left. You are admitting to an affair that gives you motive to try and use it as an alibi, the advisor repeated with confusion. When leaving, the woman continued, I noticed there was a button missing from his boots. Convenient. He left them outside his door to air out. Anything could have happened to them. Also convenient. The advisor moves to the back of his desk, waving the guards in from the doorway. I think we're done here. You can save anything else you have to say for the trial. You can't do this, the woman replies, her breathing starting to become hurried. You're no ruler. The advisor meets eyes with the woman. And your lover killed the man fighting for your right to rule, so not a good judge of character either. Their hands were manacled, the woman continuing to protest, the guard remaining silent, and they were escorted from the room. In the morning sun of a new day, the chairman and the advisor walk along a path, passing by the large red brick library as the boy pulls up to the entrance on his bright red bicycle. He's taking it on himself, says the chairman. Convincing argument he made to the council, says the advisor. Makes sense, he is close enough in age, and he has been groomed to lead. He continues to impress me every day, the chairman says with a smile. Agreed. The poor boy, though. His father and uncle taken from him, and now his aunt in jail. I'm sure it's not the rise in power he envisioned. The men continue past the library as the boy makes his way into it. The boy spends some time looking around and pulling books from the shelves before heading up to the desk. The librarian waits behind it, smiling at the boy as he approaches, her face just starting to show her age, wrinkles at her eyes, but her hair has been grey for as long as the boy can remember. Hello, sir, the librarian greets him. Hello, returning these to start. The boy pulls a few books from his bag. Forced survival, what to eat and what to avoid, reptiles of the East, but the librarian takes note of a law book that details the rules of succession in the kingdom. Helped make your case, it seems? Very much. Some of them are so stuck in tradition I'm amazed my father and uncle got anything done. Thank you for bending the rules a bit, he says, sliding the pile of books he had just pulled from the shelves over to the counter space the librarian had just cleared. Let's see, local geography, the history of the Venar Kingdom, feats of the Geogress Kingdom. Why not a nice fiction? I have work to do. No time, he says, rolling his eyes in exaggerated exhaustion. And renewing this, he says, taking a large book out of his bag. You haven't read this enough? Bet you're glad you aren't taking over for these men, the librarian taps the cover. Your ancestors created some bloodier times building that old empire of ours. Learn from my past, the boy says with a smile. Don't want to repeat their failures. The librarian places the large book on top of the others and slides them towards the boy. Good luck to you. We have no doubts in you, sir. With a kind nod, the boy places the books into his bag, folds the flap over the top, and winds the string around the golden button 4 times until it can't be wound again. I'm planning on doing great things. He gives the librarian one last grin. Outside, he hops onto his bike and rides off back down the path home to get to work.